The first step is to open up After Effects, which you can see I already have open here. And the second step is to make a new composition. You can do that by clicking the composition button or going up and doing composition, new composition. So I'm going to name this main comp, and it will be 1500 by 1500, and it will be 5 seconds long. Hit OK. As you can see, we just have an empty black background. The next step would be to make some text. In this case, I'm gonna take the text tool, just click it in the middle of the screen, and type in neon. That's gonna be the simple text I'm typing here. So I already have everything set, so let's pretend I don't. So this might be something, this might be the kind of text you can have. So I'm using chalkboard, and neon text is usually done. You can have the solid color or you can have an outline. And for big text, I like to have it as an outline. So to do that, you can select the solid color here, and there's a little box under it, which if you hover over it, it says no fill color. So you can click on that, and you can see now you have a stroke. And if you click on the stroke, you can just make that white. Full 100% white, and down here you can find an align section where you can help align the text. If you don't see that, you can go into window and you'll find it right here. So I'm just going to go in and bring it up a little bit. So as you can see, it looks pretty flat. It's just white and black, and if it was a real neon tube, it would have some kind of roundness to it. So you can fake this pretty easily with an effect. So under effects and presets, you can just type in emboss, and you can take that, drag it to your text layer, and right away you're not seeing the best result. So what you can do is you can play around with the relief. So you can see you can push it a little bit over, so it's basically cutting. Half of it is gray and half of it is white. And you can just bring down the contrast so you can have a bit of a blend. So for me, 3.5 and 16 looks pretty good. So you can see the difference before and after. So that's a pretty big difference. So what we are going to do now is we're going to duplicate this text, and I'm going to pre-compose this and call this neon flicker. And I'm just going to go in here and get rid of the emboss. And I'm just going to put in fill. And I'm going to fill this with a color that I like. So we're going to go for this bright blue here. So that looks pretty good. And I'm just going to animate it flickering on. So at about 8 frames, I'm going to hit T on the keyboard. And bring down the opacity down to 0. So if you want to find the actual opacity, you can just go down and then go into transform, and you'll find it down here. So I'm going to keyframe it by clicking on the stopwatch, and I'm going to go about 2 frames forward, and I'm going to put in 60. I'm going to go 2 more frames forward, put in 20. I'm going to go another 2 frames forward and put 100. So this kind of makes it look like it flickers on. So that's perfect. And don't forget to save your project. So I'm just going to hit Command S, and I'm going to save it just in my documents, call it Neon Tutorial. So let's go back into our main comp, and as you can see, now when you play it, there's blue that appears on top of our neon. So the next step would be, you're going to be using this blue as a glow. So because we already have the flickering happening on the inside, we don't need to be keyframing anything for this part of text anymore. So all we're going to add is fast blur, so fast box blur. And you can just take that and bring the radius up to, yeah, like 68, seems pretty good. And you're gonna take the mode and you're gonna change it to add. So you might not be seeing too much result right now. So I'm gonna duplicate this neon flicker and I'm gonna change the opacity down to 60. And I'm gonna start reducing the blur radius to maybe 30 looks pretty good. Then I'm gonna duplicate that one more time, bring down the opacity to 30, and bring it down even lower to about 4 pixels or so. So now you can see it's starting to look like nice glowing hot neon sign. So I'm gonna do just another duplicate of this and add some more blur, about 4 pixels, yeah, maybe 7. So that's just adding a little bit more glow to it, so it glows pretty hot. That's looking pretty nice, and if you hit play, so you can see that now it gets the animated flicker on all those layers, which is looking pretty good. And now we can add some bottom text to this as well, and you can do that in a similar way. I'm just gonna take the size of the text to make it smaller, and I'm just gonna type in tutorial period, or best tutorials only. And I'm gonna get rid of the stroke, and I'm just gonna keep the fill and make that white. You should probably make sure to have the text highlighted when you do that. So there you go. And I'm also gonna change this from bold to regular, because I don't want the text to be too bold. And we're gonna align it to the center. Just gonna bring it, that looks pretty good. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pre-comp this. I'm gonna call this bottom text. And I'm gonna just copy and paste this out here. And I'm gonna copy and paste the emboss onto it as well. So now if you take a look at it, it's also embossed in the same way the other text was. And now we're just gonna go into bottom text, put the fill there. I'll actually just copy the fill over from neon flicker. So you can just do Command C, copy the effect, so make sure it's selected, and then paste it to the bottom text. And I want these to flicker on individually in order. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to around 20 frames. I'm gonna duplicate this and delete everything except for best. And I'll just move it over to where it was. And if you hold shift, you can move everything exactly on the same plane. So then I'm just gonna duplicate it and type in tutorials. And you can do the same thing by holding shift and using the arrow keys. Looks pretty good. And I'm gonna duplicate that one more time. Type in only. And I'm gonna move this over once again. Perfect, so that's looking great. I'm gonna turn off our bottom layer that had all of the text on it, and I'm just gonna go into best and keyframe the opacity similar to the way we did for the neon text. So I'm gonna go 2 frames forward and just go 60, 2 more frames forward, type in 20, 2 more frames forward, and type in 100. And then once you have that, you can just click on the opacity on the text that says opacity, copy it, and you can just paste it onto the other text by hitting Command V. So now you can see that it flickers on, and when we go back to the main comp, we are going to do a similar thing like we did before with these flickers, which is getting a fast blur, putting it on top, making sure that the mode is set to add, setting the blur to be pretty high. So here we could do about 50, 53, duplicate this, change the opacity to 60, I'll bring this down, 19 looks pretty good. We'll duplicate this, set it to 30. Pixels, okay, and then I'll just duplicate it one more time and just do a pretty good in between. So now you can see that we have a really nice neon text right here that flickers on, and we have the text that individually flickers on as well. Perfect. So it seems like only is missing a period, or I guess not. This only is missing a period. There we go. Perfect. That is looking great. So now to export your wonderful masterpiece, you can go into File, Export, Add to Render Queue. And I usually select Apple ProRes 4444. Hit OK. Choose a destination where you want to save it. So I'll do Documents, and I'll just call this Neon Tutorial. Hit Save, and I will hit Render. So that's it for the tutorial section of this video. I will see you in the assignment.